Good morning. Today is Saturday, June 20th, 2020. This is Jay Leask, and this is This Week in Teams.
Hey, I'm Craig Jenke, also here with Jay, and we've got a third guest, this third person this time. Our guest, Ralph Rivas. He's I don't know what you are, Ralph. You're senior architect. What's your thing? You work at Magenic, a consulting firm in Chicago. I don't know your title though.
Sure. So, I'm a consultant, right? So that means you do whatever it is that you have to do to. How do we say bill is the old question, right? But otherwise, I'm normally a solution architect. That would be my normal job. I just happen to be doing more of the what's called the collaboration aspect. And what does collaboration mean? Working with other people. Well, duh, that's what everyone does, right? But technically speaking, I get to hold the title because I play with things like, I don't know, SharePoint, Teams, the Office suite, that little PowerPoint that you have over there that apparently can do more things that it can do, and you don't know about it. And it's like, why can't I read this file sort of stuff? All the way to yes, I want to create an enterprise system that never goes down and can do hundreds of thousands of things at the same time as does coffee. And our CEO is happy. Okay.
That's sweet.
There we go.
So
yes.
Good thing I heard in there that you at least do Teams, because that's the reason we have you here.
Teams.
So on this bright early first day of summer, I believe, summer solstice day. Welcome. And Jay, what are we going to talk about today on Teams?
So this is going to be the first in a series of use cases and examples showcasing how people can get the most out of Microsoft Teams. Craig and I were talking over the last week. The weekly release cycle is not really enough to have what technology is new in Teams this week. So we decided that we'd throw in this kind of showcase every once in a while, because we get that question a lot, like, how do we as an organization get the most out of Microsoft Teams? There's a dozen or so case studies on Microsoft's website, stuff about frontline workers, stuff about Power Automate and the Power Platform. But being members of the community, Craig, you run the Chicago Suburbs user group. I'm about to kick off a NOVA Northern Virginia 365 group here. I present at a bunch of stuff. You guys do a lot. We thought this would be a good first topic, which is, how do you run virtual events using Microsoft Teams? What are our options?
Yeah.
So and Ralph, you.
Sorry,
go ahead, Craig.
So me and Ralph run a user group. Right? We run a Power Platform user group. We use just Teams so that people can interact back and forth together. But most recently, and I think you were going to transition, Ralph has been helped out with several live events. You actually were in it, but Ralph, I'll let you talk about the live events.
Oh, okay. So I'll go back to the first thing. It's a lot of people, if you think about it, probably because they have, and I always look at this way. I ask people, do you have Excel? Yeah. You have Word? Yeah. You have PowerPoint? Yeah. So how do you think you're paying for that? Oh, I don't know. The IT guy has it. Well, you probably have SharePoint. Oh, I don't have SharePoint. You probably have Teams. Oh, I don't have Teams. And then I said, what are those dots that you see up there on the corner? Those little what's that? Tic-tac-toe or something? Said no. Click on it. And the waffle. There's the term for it. The waffle, because it's got the holes. Put some syrup in it and feel good. But I said, click on it and feel better, because look at that. What's this? Teams and all that stuff. We're using Zoom, and sometimes I have to just hit my head and say, look, okay, here you are. You're paying for Office 365 because some IT guy says, I'm going to save money, and I'm going to go to the Bahamas this week for all the money I saved. And I'm not going to tell anybody what they got, because if I do, God damn it, I have to support it. You can bleep that out later. And so, and here was the thing. My evangelism, as they say, is to say, look, you have stuff. Use it. And Teams is one of the biggest things. And Teams, people don't realize the power in that little itty bitty product, because looks itty bitty, and they're like, ooh, right, compared to Zoom, compared to all these other products, like not just Zoom, but who else? Who are the other guys there?
WebEx.
Like the WebEx or any of those, or even just Slack. The communication tool. So everyone's like, oh, it doesn't hold a candle to that. It's like, well, here's the thing. It doesn't hold a candle to that because it's busy holding a million other candles. All right. So for your one candle, I give you something that handles something in a huge way. So even that they don't believe. Well, it seems slow for me. It doesn't do what I want. So here's the background into going into Teams with doing all this stuff. So first of all, you have to have a The fact is, they've been doing this for a while with webinars and everything else. And here was Teams sitting with this live events little product for a while that can do so much. I said, what can it do? I'll give you an idea. Until recently, up to 10,000 users could come to even attend a live event. That seems like a lot, but guess what? They doubled that recently, and not necessarily because of what's going on in the world, but because they could. The whole idea behind all this stuff is the power of the cloud. What people weren't watching for, someone at my door, the people who weren't watching for was the fact that Microsoft was growing this cloud thing under the covers to support this huge product, as well as other customers and everything else. And what they were learning every time they kept applying and applying and applying. Live events is essentially that extension of that. Why should someone go to another program to do what essentially is something similar to what exists in this platform and make it bigger? Right?
Yep.
So there's my use case over here. So I started doing stuff. There's my use case. Like, how do I present that to even my own company to say, hey, we should be using this for like training and everything else? It's like a lot of like, it seems like a lot of like overhead for anything else. It's like, well, here, try it this way. All right. Have you ever come to a Teams meeting and they're like, there's like a dog barking in the back and they won't stop, or someone's sniffling or something else? Can you please go on mute? That there's like a progressive commercial with all the people is like talking and going and making noises and stuff. I said, live events is like, okay, you're a presenter. Would you like not to be interrupted? Well, that would be great. Live events. Right off the bat. Okay. And then the other one was like, well, I have to do all this work. It's like, well, here's the thing. Remember how they said that the web's going to take work away? Well, guess what? You're going to need another person to do this thing. And this is another important aspect. In a live event, even though you could do it yourself, and like a doctor, you could not be a doctor and operate on yourself. Best to have that other role called the producer. Insert the musical right over there. The producer, your friend, is the guy that runs the show, or the guy or gal that runs the show on the side, maybe watches the Q&A and everything else while the speaker focuses on giving their presentation. You have no one talking and everything else. If you want to have chats and all this stuff, you can go ahead and have all your other windows and do all that stuff. Sure, but it's focused. All right. And this is the use case of the single event, very focused. You have your presentation. You have all the tools of your presentation that you can do. You have someone else that's over there that wouldn't have had a job otherwise, that's actually taking care of stuff in the background. And now you have the audience getting a lot of stuff that they need just really quickly. They don't have to go in. They can like turn on the sound for all they want. They can be like running their coffee grinder and be a barista in the background, and you won't even care. Right?
The nice thing I've done on a couple of the live sessions that we've had is we've also had a few other roles of just people, if we have enough people giving questions in the Q&A on the side chat, you need people to answer that. The presenter doesn't have time to monitor the chat, and the producer doesn't usually have time to monitor the chat. And if you're getting, like the one I did, we had over 100 questions in just a short period of time. So we needed like 4 people answering questions.
So there you go.
People don't always ask questions that everybody knows either, right? So sometimes there's a little research, quickly researching.
So the big, very important thing for those that are, for those who are not familiar with Teams, there's 2 concepts, right? There's the people that are in the show behind the scenes. Those are the ones actually invited to the event. So you're either there as a speaker or producer, or you can be a producer and a speaker. It doesn't matter. The more people you have in that staff, those are the people that essentially are in almost like a Teams meeting, but with an extra little feature if you're a producer. Everyone else, as many as you want, and they can be external. They can come from anywhere. Well, as many as you want is when I say 10,000 plus into that higher number. Come in from the outside. When you send that link out, right, as an invite, those are people coming to the show. When you send out the link that they give you at the end, it says, send out these links to the people that are coming to participate. That's what you would actually add to an invite, maybe with a calendar entry and everything else. That would be a cool feature. It's like, send this invite as an invite. A little button, Microsoft, just user voice.
User voice. There we go.
We're gonna. So the idea is like, but otherwise it's just manual. You take the link, just like in Forms, you take the QR code and do whatever you will with it and paste it onto another meeting or something else. But that's the important aspect, and that's just for a single item. And the idea is like, if this is why we don't want, sometimes you want to give your boss, and you tell your boss, and this sort of happened for real at a company, not saying which one, where after the boss took the demo and saw it works, okay, I can do this. And instead of like following my advice, where I said you need a producer, you need a speaker, you need maybe a couple other
Tried
people,
to do it all himself.
they did it all himself. And next thing you know, he invited everybody who was supposed to be audience as attendees.
Oh, that's lovely.
So everyone started showing up at the 250 limit or whatever that was. It was like, it's not working, it's crashing. And then they're all seeing all this stuff they shouldn't see. I'm like, what did you do?
Send them the right link. It works better.
And it didn't. This sucks. Why doesn't it work? I said, well, weren't you there at the session? I even recorded it. Did you at least watch it? And now I'm thinking maybe he was making coffee in the background and not really listening. He's like, So fortunately, it was 2 shows that day. I did this show in the afternoon, and yes, they are shows. I did them in the afternoon, and I said, okay, see, this is how clean.
This is how it should work.
Yeah, it's like they used to say there was a car company that no longer exists that used to say, leave the driving to us. Oh, no, they do exist. Greyhound, they still exist. They still exist.
Yeah,
thank you.
They're not a car company either.
They're not a car company. It was a bus company. Well,
close enough.
Some sort of automobile. So back in the day, that was the whole point. It's like the whole point is like when you have the roles, if you stick to the roles, this is how you can make it successful. And this is, and I think that's a segue into what we're going to go into next. I think you wanted to talk about some major giant monster event.
I did.
Yes.
So just to kind of recap what we were saying there. So there's Teams meetings and then there's live events. So Teams meetings have a limit right now of 250 people. We just talked about with the Teams for Education announcement, they're going to 300. There might be expectations of more in the near future. And then there's Teams live events, which have that max. It used to be 10,000. They just recently bumped it up to 20,000, if I remember correctly. 20,000 people attending one meeting, which is pretty spectacular. So the other side of that difference too, because I've experienced this being an attendee in a live event. It's much more, it's one way, right? That's what you were saying is you want a multi-way communication, create your Teams meeting. Mm-hmm. You want to produce a show and push that out to people, create your live event.
Yeah.
So what you brought up, and we've mentioned it 2 or 3 times here, let's get into it, was the Microsoft 365 virtual marathon. It's a really cool story. We're going to put a few links on it. The long story short is what it ended up being was 36 straight hours of virtual content presented from around the globe. I was lucky enough to be a presenter on it. They had somewhere around 300 presenters and 26,000 attendees across the 36 hours. And what's his, like 400 sessions, 450 sessions?
400 plus sessions. The stats are on the site. And actually, the link that you should probably include is the blog from one of their starters, Joel Olson. He has basically, here's what we did, a recap, and he's got stats. He's even got Power BI reports. Oh, wow. Power BI. I get shuddery when I hear Power BI actually used in something that actually meaningful that I'd like to know about, right?
Yes.
So yes, and then check that out, and they'll have all the stats. So if for folks that say, oh, that number is not what's on the site, hey, don't worry about it. Go check it. The numbers are there.
So what I liked about it when we were talking about it, Ralph, was you were talking about how they went about that. They're doing 12 tracks, running it, that many people. One of the things you brought up, and I think you related it to this company that you don't want to name, but the fact that they could do that, community-based organization, means pretty much anybody can do that, right?
So here's the thing about this. This was done, and I'm not sure if everyone's familiar with what's called a dev tenant. If you're a developer, or if you're someone that works with Office 365, Microsoft 365 a lot, there is a program out there, HTTP, aka .ms/O365 dev program. If you go there, you can get yourself your own, literally E5 license level tenant. The only caveats, you got to work with it. You got to use it every so often because it's 90 days. If you're not really using it, they're going to take it away. And the point of it is to learn how it works. Ryan Scooten, one of the main guys in it, had a dev tenant. And with this dev tenant, they ran this show, right? Yeah. This is not like when they ran the show, they didn't go out there and pay Microsoft Gold premium prices for something to make it happen.
Hey, just as the Microsoft rep in the house, just let people know that the dev tenant is supposed to be used for development and for community type purposes, not for profit type of things. So,
correct.
Yes.
So again, back to the community thing. That's a good thing to mention. This was for the community, if technically speaking. It's for you to learn, and if you're going to use it in that fashion, it would be for the community, because any site that you're like actually making business with it or getting your family to use it and turning it around for something, actually they have metrics that are going to find you, because especially now AI is getting better.
Yeah,
so
they're good.
just be very aware. Some people think, oh, I can get by this. No, that's not so easy. Not so easy. I saw someone actually told me, oh, it got expired on me. It's like, well, what did you do with it? Well, my wife had this website thing that she was trying to sell us. No, dude, that was too easy. That was too easy. You had a link to, you had a store thing. The metrics can find that. So.
Sorry, I didn't mean to derail it. I just wanted to let people know that they couldn't. That's
very important to
their
have.
business with, but.
Going back to the community thing, the fact that it was done with a dev tenant, the fact that they were actually able to run at most 22 live events side by side at the peak, right? And the average is around 12 side by side, because usually depending on the hour, depending on where they were, and depending on the number of speakers, there was that going on. Joel Olson, who was the main guy in that, had the record of being able to produce 12 simultaneous events at the same time. So he had all these like VMs and windows and all that stuff going, so he can go back and forth and go check and see how it's going and everything else. Other people like maybe did 4 or 5 or 6 and everything else. But the fact that you could do that at scale, at that level, and then actually have it work. And other than the fact that when they started, and you'll see in when they discussed it, they had some initial problems in the beginning, and Microsoft, turns out they treated it like, well, it's a regular customer having a regular problem. Let's resolve it. Within an hour or so, it was resolved, and everything else went swimmingly afterwards. By the time I came in for my producer duties, I was like, and people were warning about all these problems, and I'm going in there like, what problems? Everything is like clean, click, 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 fast, snippy. And this is the dev tenant. I went back and said, wait a minute, did you pay extra for this? What's going on? Why does this feel speedy? Well, it feels speedy only because you just didn't realize it's happening just like your other system. It's like, well, is your Teams right now slow? And I go back, I'm like, no. Well, no, actually, it's not slow. It is speedy. So it's like sometimes perceptions will come in where, like, if you come in with the perception that something is slow, well, it's going to be as slow as you think it is. All right. But technically speaking, if it works and it goes straight through, you're doing everything you can. I mean, talk about the ultimate use case. If you're doing the community, here's the example. Internally to your company, all right, if you have your own E5 tenant, if you're doing courses, classes, the so-called town hall and everything else, and you really want that interaction, it's the ultimate way to go. There's the use case. If you want to hit out the community and you want to expand and you want to make things happen, ultimately, I mean, or you can pay for it, right? You want to go Zoom and everything else. Think about it, though. When you're doing those products, they're all separate. So if you want to have that interconnectivity, if you want to play with Flow or any little thing that you want to do, MS Forms or whatever, it's all there, which is why I loved it and love to participate in it.
Yeah.
Hey, I just want to jump in with one little thing that I thought was interesting. You were talking about running multiple live events at the same time. So Joel did 12, but yours was up to 20. Just a thing that was recently pushed up is you were only allowed to do 15 simultaneous live events.
It's true.
But they kicked it up to 50 not too long ago, so like last month. So there's another thing that we've had the base product going. It's been running for a while, but now they're starting to see use cases where people need to be able to run 22 live events at the same time.
That's true.
So for some of the largest companies or largest organizations or the virtual conferences and stuff now. So again, the power of the cloud, just to be able to flip some switches and bang, you're from 15 to 50. So.
Exactly. So if I started thinking about it, like especially my current clients are very, very, very large, and I'm trying to think how many Teams meetings could go on at a time. I just sometimes look and try to schedule people. Ever see the calendar that looks like it's a Monet painting with every single piece filled out with every single color, and then I try to make a meeting with like 30, 40 people or something, and I'm like, geez, how am I going to schedule this? Well, if the AI is not going to find anybody, that's any kind of schedule. How about a live meeting? Right? Why go through that pain, make it a live meeting and be done with it? People come in when they choose and everything else. Now, that being said, also, how many of these Teams meetings might be going on at the same time? I still struggle at when someone says, well, I want to do regular teams. I wish regular teams would do 10,000 and so they can all interact. I said, have you ever gone to like a Twitch channel or one of those where like the kids are out there and like a YouTube channel where like the chat's going a million miles an hour? If you can't follow 3 or 4 people in a conversation and they're pissed off at the guy sniffling at his coffee, how are you going to handle 10,000 people who will have all the power to share their screen, to turn on the mic, you know, and everything else? It's like, think about it. It's like, come on, it's live events is your way to go.
Yeah, the idea of even just a standard meeting having 300 people in it trying to collaborate, because again, Teams meetings are for collaboration. They are not for one-way communication. Like, that just blows my mind from a concept perspective.
So there's right. That's the use case right there. Just think about it. People say, well, why is Teams limited to 250 or something like that? It's like, have you ever been in a room with 250 people and collaborated with each and every one of them?
Oh, come on. If you get more than 10, right, you just want to start hitting with baseball bats.
That's pretty much it becomes a battle. It's like
we do not condone hitting people with baseball bats.
This is true. It's only virtually, right?
Hey man, haven't you ever seen
oh man,
the Untouchables?
Untouchables. Yeah, there we go.
Oh, Lord.
So here was the thing with that. It's like when you go to a conference room can be huge, but people are usually sitting as audience sitting back. Right. They're not in round tables or in one giant, Knights of the Round Table.
That's actually an awesome way to describe it, because that is exactly what you're doing. But I think if we explained it more to our customers, right? Hey, 300 people, you go to an auditorium, right? They don't, it's not just a back and forth. It's more like a lecture. And then if you have questions, you raise your hand and somebody brings you a microphone.
Exactly. The guy that goes to the middle of the microphone, there's your QA segment. As opposed to a conference room, we're sitting there, there's a whiteboard, there's all that stuff. We're going back and forth, handing that paper. Let me check that. Your stuff sucks. Let's put this out. And beat up the board. Don't beat up the people. You know what I mean? And that's true collaboration. If you think you can collaborate, and that's why when they say, well, let's have 300 people in a regular Teams meeting, it's like, well, okay, maybe the use case for that is like you're expecting at any moment anyone you want the ability to present or do anything else. Well, the reason why you want to up that limit is so that if you do perhaps have a live event, you can have speakers and invite them in. Now, here's the thing for speakers: while a show is going on, you can invite someone in. And here, I'm sending you a link. Click on it, and you will now be brought in as speaker. You can't, by the way. Live events is reserved ahead of time, so you can't like add producers or take out producers. It's pretty much once you start a show, that's it till its end. Because the way it works is that it reserves all its capacity somewhere. Yeah. Right. Okay. And that's a lot of work. It gets saved up. It can't just on the fly dynamically chop down, and the next thing you know, 100 VMs comes in and comes back. Just doesn't happen.
Okay, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah.
So one thing you mentioned town halls, and so AvePoint does right now. We're doing monthly town halls to try and help build culture while we're all working from home, right? Yeah. And during our town halls, one of the things we do for that interaction is we actually spin up's the wrong word, but we actually create a Yammer thread in Yammer communities, and then we link back and forth so people know, hey, yes, you can use the Q&A. But go to the Yammer thread, take a selfie of you watching the video and post your selfie. Sure. Feel free to collaborate or communicate in that thread as well. So there is a way to still communicate with each other, even though we're doing that one-way communication.
Interactively, right. So the Yammer and even the Teams chat on, let's say, just the Teams on the side would give you your ability to now, how do we say it? Interactively communicate. The Q&A is more of a ask the question, it gets reserved. There is no interaction because you don't see other participants in a live event item. Yeah. The whole point of that is not so much anonymity, but actually privacy. Right. Yep. So it's like, well, I don't want to know that my mom came to this particular session because, Mom, what are you doing here? This is not or something, It's
that's all the comments that say, Ralph, you're doing a good job. Ralph, tuck your shirt in.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, sometimes they say, I don't want Mom to know I'm here sort of situation. It's that particular case where you have that huge audience. You have that ability to speak freely and communicate freely in that particular case. If you need to now collaborate, now go to your Yammer, go to your Teams or whatever other tool that you want to do it in. Yammer is the best one for that because Yammer actually you can upvote, for example, things and downvote things. So that's really cool.
So just to kind of pivot a little bit, and we're getting a little long here, so to start to wrap this up, but one thing that we talked about Wednesday, Ralph, I mean, you were just talking about our event coming up, the M365 Chicago that we're going to do in the fall. That's going to be virtual. A war room. Do you want to talk a little bit about it, how that works and how that can help in producing the event?
So the concept of the war room is basically a Teams channel on the side that you would open up. Essentially, all your speakers, maybe the folks that are like doing the production or the technical people in the back, especially the larger the event, the more people you would expect to be in the war room. The idea is if somebody reports, if you're doing like 12 live events at the same time, what's going to happen? Oh, a speaker doesn't show up. A speaker has technical problem. Their mic doesn't work. A hawk just dived into and broke in their monitor and stuff like that. I just came up with that, but it could happen. It could happen.
I actually just saw a picture of on Twitter like last night of an owl that flew into a cop car. It's like,
oh my God,
it could happen. It's like, remember Judy Tenuta? She's like, it could happen. It could happen. These things, right? So these things can happen at technical issues, and then little things like having the war room, and in the war room they can say, oh, I have an updated slide for the QR code is updated. Here, speakers, come and get it quickly. Update your slides with this information, or like say, okay, that site's down. Let's go ahead. Let's send a producer over there or with the spare producer because this producer didn't show up, or they went down. Their line went down. The war room is a critical aspect. And now it happens to be in Teams. Teams is better for that particular interaction. And just leave your video off. You don't need it. Just simply communicate. You could do it Yammer. Sure. Why not? But even in a real production studio, think about it. Remember in the back, like ever seen in those old TV shows, you got the guys in the back, the control room. You have the producer going, here, the next, that guy. And that guy doing that. That whole team over there, that literally has a how do we say it? A role that exists in this particular situation. The war room is what we're calling it mainly because it's to solve problems, bad things that happen, right? But technically speaking, if we're going to call it anything, it's the control room.
Yeah.
It's really what it is. The control room it oversees everything.
That's no fun though.
But that's not as fun as war room, right? It's like, hey, there's no fighting in the war room.
I want to push my tanks around, and I want to take on.
This is the one where you bring in Dr. Strangelove, where the generals are fighting over there. Like, hey, stop that! There's no fighting in the war room because essentially it's what not supposed to be. You're supposed to be there for troubleshooting, for technical support to get all that stuff. But that would be again a best practice recommendation in any large situation.
Awesome.
So for the virtual marathon, they actually did an in-person war room, right? They brought 3 or 4 people into one person's apartment.
Yep. So it just so happened in that particular case that, if the story behind it is started out as SoCal had their user group, because of events, we can't really have it. Let's make it virtual. And then all of a sudden, let's make it big virtual, inviting other user groups. Why not just make it, today, SoCal, tomorrow, the world, literally. It's like tomorrow, the world.
Literally how that went.
They did the world 7 languages. They had all these countries that were participating. They went and said, pinky in the brain, it's like tomorrow we conquer the world as we're going to do. Yep. And they did that. And it just happens that they had people that were in SoCal together that were, I imagine, vetted before they met each other in the room, brought in, and, nobody was sick, sit down, go ahead. And then they were physically there. That's good because you can quickly go back and forth with people, everything else up. But that being said, only of those 3 people were there. The other 20 people in the war room were not. And they were literally all over. They were in Japan. They were in India. They were in Argentina. They were everywhere.
Chicago. One of them was from Chicago.
Yeah. Well, one guy once in a while for Chicago. I went in there, gave some tips, and then I just left it on, right? Just watching for anything that looked like it might, get me or something like that. But frankly, except for the morning where they had all the issues where it came into play, mostly. Yeah. It was mostly quiet. It was like some people say, hey, hi, how's it going? And tips. And it became more of a chatty, like, when you go to the coffee place and you're just everyone sharing coffee. Hey, how's it going over there? Yeah, these guys. Oh, that guy. Became one of those kind of things. Yeah, that's pretty much like, yeah, I've been working out over here. That's it. Okay, that's the next team's user voice. Like, yeah, we need a virtual cigarette. Come on, come on, Microsoft, get it together.
So the things just to recap what we talked about, we have the Teams meeting versus the Teams live events. Yes. And really, if you think about that, the collaboration versus the production.
And the marriage of the two.
It's true. And so if you're doing if you want like a lightweight collaboration with a Teams meeting or a Teams live event, that is, then you have the options of like setting up a Yammer thread, using the Q&A very heavily, using a Teams meeting on the side. I really like that idea of, look, if you're trying to be successful here, create that war room concept, invite your producers all in, have a single place, whether it's virtual or in person, that you can communicate with each other and jump to help each other where that needs to happen. That's really good too. But you know what I'm hearing, and I do another podcast where we talk about planning. What I'm really hearing is plan a little bit. Think about what's your goal.
Okay. That's true. In fact, that's all of it. And you'll probably, when you guys see that blog, you'll see a lot of it had to do with planning. It was basically they looked at it and said, okay, if we have a plan and we stick to it, we'll be fine, right? But the problem is, if you're doing this ad hoc, and ad hoc things will happen. The more planning you have, the more preparation. And we did, by the way, I did also an interview with those three guys. And one of the things that came about was like, you planned for everything. You said like anything can go wrong and anything that can go wrong will go wrong. And I see that literally when I came over there, you had a producer's guide. You guys had like, here's a slide for when things go wrong. Here's a script for when things went wrong. They had this and that. In other words, they didn't plan for the good. They planned really for all the bad. And the secret to a lot of it, and almost every project that we're into, right, is to plan for all the bad, because at the end of the day, the worst case, the best case is like all the good happens and you never have to touch any of that. But very likely one of these things are going to come into play. The more you have that's out there, the better.
Cool. Sweet. Very cool. That's a really good kind of reminder at the end of all this, is like you can have all this technology you want. And this is a conversation we have all the time, is you can have all the technology you want, but if you're not planning for how to use the technology, how to get around when the technology doesn't fit your use case,
right,
and how to resolve when issues happen, good luck.
How to handle change, things change. Like, okay, well, here's our plans. Like, oh, but something changed. Oh gosh, what do I do now? Well, change management. It's like, wait a minute, I'm just going to fix it. Wait a minute, forgot this one other topic, my favorite topic, governance. All right, who's the one allowed to touch it? Remember I said speakers and producers? You don't let the speaker go in and say, well, I feel like, sharing this right now. I said, no, governance, I'm in charge. There's like the rules were set. These are the rules. These are the rules. If you have a problem, it's that guy to fix it, not you. I know you can fix it. Sit back. It's that guy.
Let him fix it. Yeah.
Yes.
Come in the war room. Tell us the problem. We're going to solve it.
Tell us the problem. We're going to solve it. Like, okay, let's get the communication guy. He's in charge. Okay. Okay. We're going to get the commandos to come in and do the work. Oh, but I have a gun. No, sit down. Sit down, kid.
So then I would say the last thing that would fall into that, we want to plan. We also want to practice a little bit too, right?
Yeah. Yep. So that's happened. So they had that one thing that M365 did before. They said a whole week before, they had as many sessions as they could muster, because they had, of course, global sessions. So in a sense, remember you said 36 hours, maybe more like 48, because they had all those practice sessions that had to go. And almost maybe half as much time as the presentations probably went into practice. When I looked at the schedule of all the people, and to accommodate as much, we try to get like 10 or 12 people maybe at like a practice session as they can, but maybe that's not, maybe they'll end up with just one because of the time zone that they're in, right? So they literally accommodated all these people to practice, right? I feel bad for those that didn't attend the practice. And in fact, sometimes you could tell who practiced, or at least knows it, and who did not. Right away.
I was signed up for a practice session, and then I couldn't make it because of customer meetings, and I wasn't able to get an invite to a later one, and I panicked going into it. Like, I wasn't able to practice, and I panicked, and thankfully Galen was able to. So Galen, I literally like I'm trying to get into my meeting, and all of a sudden I've got a Teams meeting that pops up, and Galen pulls me in, and he's like, "All right, you're here. Just go." Like, oh.
See that? This is exactly the situation, right? So as much as we try to say everyone practices, it's a good thing, but we know that some won't, right? And when that happens, you just have to deal with it. It's just another use case.
Cool.
Yeah. Sweet. Well, I think that's been enough time talking about all this. Can you wrap us up, Jay?
Yes, Jay, bring us out.
I think we've kind of, the last 10 minutes have been a really good wrap. Practice, plan, make sure you've got the right space for the right need. Ralph, this was fantastic. This was
Yeah, I
really
appreciate you
excellent
coming on, Ralph. I know it was last minute too. On a Saturday morning at 7:30 a.m.
Hey, before the baby wakes up. But by the way, so that's what my phone was doing. The baby was waking up, or our little kid was. So just
you're
in time.
breaking up there.
Fortunately,
Did you
though,
say
she
the
was
baby was at the
prevented
front
from
door?
coming downstairs. Well, the front door. Yeah, she went outside the front where my wife is doing gardening. She,
Oh.
because I have those rings that tell you.
So it's not a real baby. It's a little bit bigger than a baby.
Well, yeah. So bigger than a bread box, smaller than a shipping container.
My 2-year-old has figured out how to open the screen door. It's kind of scary.
Mine. If don't let her see you put in the password, because she'll be like,
yes.
She memorizes patterns. I said,
Yep.
wait a minute, but it's 12 digits.
Done.
What did you type? I don't know. Do it again. Oh God.
All right. Well,
Then I'll
gentlemen,
stay away from the
thank you
National
so
Defense Systems.
Exactly.
much.
Patterns.
Thank you so much, Ralph. Craig, good to talk to you as usual.
Nice talking.
We look forward to working with you again sometime.
Absolutely. We'll be looking forward. And Craig, I'll be talking to you pretty soon for our next user group.
All right, awesome. Talk to you later, guys.
All right. Have fun.
Enjoy
Take
your
care.
summer, first day of summer.
Summer later. Okay.